and welcome to the 1%ers Performance Podcast, coming to you from Combermary and Gadigal country in Australia. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and we acknowledge the First Nations people of these lands. This is the podcast exploring how small changes make a big impact. I'm Mario Buchs, and together with my co-host Tim Buxton, we'll discover the unseen edges of peak performance to help athletes, teams and leaders unlock their exponential growth. And now, it's time to dive in and find the 1% that changes everything. Hello.
Hello.
We're back.
We're back. So, Mario, what are we going to be diving into today? What's in the mind of Mario Books?
I think it's in our minds, right? As we're talking about building a good crew now for our Odyssey and our adventure later this year, which we've spoken about in depth, and there's a lot of information out there now, videos and social media posts about our humanitarian Iraq 100. Yeah, we were just chatting the other week about, this whole, how do you belong to a group of people, or in this case where we're building this crew, how important it is to share the load when there is a load. Nobody can do any of this on their own. That's point number one. So in a positive and in a negative environment, at work and at home. We were just discussing earlier on, there's angry customers, right? That they call in the corporate world and they want to really give you a hard time. Let's say they're right. They're correct, right? They've got a problem with one of your products or the way people have been behaving or treating them. And then, there's a lot of solutions to this in a way, right? And we always want to fix things immediately rather than just sit back. I think that's something you discussed as well. And we had a chat about that last week. Sometimes we don't need to fix everything immediately. It's just a matter of keeping people involved and making them feel that they belong. Point number one, we have to build this environment, this culture within a business or in a company or in a team. But then the most important part is that these things are broken down a little bit. Why is this customer angry? Is it a negative if a customer calls in angry or if someone's not happy? In business, I usually say, hey, he's giving us an opportunity, still. He could have walked away, depending on what it is. We said it about the coffee. If I'm not happy with my coffee, I can walk away 250 meters and I'll go to the next coffee shop. Sometimes in business, it works like that as well. We deal with a lot of small businesses. And if people are not happy and they still call in, at least they're giving us an opportunity. They weren't that unhappy. They're just kind of, And again, there's happiness, there's fulfillment and so on. We use that word happy as if it's if it's going out of shape, So, I hope this makes sense. Just kind of, we sit down and halving the load or quartering the load of an issue that has to be discussed and sorted out just helps. It just, when we go through pain, that's what it is,
What I hear you saying is it almost feels like our whole lives are an attempt to solve one problem after the next problem, whether it is in business, just like you said, complaints coming. You can look at a global sense. You could look at the crazy wars and conflicts that are happening on right now politically, and it can be disheartening thinking there's just, we're not getting any closer to solving problems. And then you micro it down into your family and it's like there's my car didn't start today, had to call RSCQ, got to buy a new battery, and you're managing, your finances are a struggle, and how do I get through this challenging season, cost of living going up, and we're always solving problems, kids fighting, whatever it may be. And I think if we want to be able to just not kind of eke by and go from one problem to the next, but if we want to create an environment of real high performance and thriving, there is this magic, I believe, like solution that really addresses and goes right to that core heart of this, that creates that space and maybe even shifts a little bit, a quarter turn, what the actual goal is that we're really looking for. Because if we can come to terms that there'll always be another problem to solve, but if our well-being doesn't improve, like you said, our happiness or more importantly, our fulfillment, If that doesn't improve and we're just going from crisis to crisis, if we want to perform at a high level, I believe that that magic solution, you could say, that core component to actually what creates that environment is this sense of belonging, is this sense of I'm in this together. Like you said, a problem shared is a problem halved. And it's one thing to say we all belong. It's another thing to create that environment where it's a felt experience. Because you were talking earlier, like when you're out on a run or you're experiencing something that's really some adversity, what happens to somebody when they feel hold a hand or feel some kind of connection? You were saying that earlier on. Like what actually happens physiologically in the body that actually can transform your experience when you're facing adversity and hardship?
Yeah, look, I'm no scientist, but there's others with, who have studied this, and they've done some tests on people, like, inflicting people with a bit of pain, on their arm or whatever, and their pain threshold level is always the same, right? Our pain threshold, that's how I believe it. Our pain threshold is the same. It's how much we can kind of. So there's two things here, right? One thing is when people were in pain and they were just kind of inflicted some pain, they felt the pain as higher, as opposed to when they were like shown a picture, for example, of one of their loved ones, right? Their partner, whatever there is. So that was one example. Something else I read many years ago, it was about swimmers. And what is the difference? And we're talking about this 1%, the performance all the time. 3 types of swimmers. The everyday swimmer, like me probably. Then there's this amateur swimmer who's in a club in a way, but he doesn't compete that much. And then they had professional swimmers. And all they did with these people is they had to put their hands in icy water or a bucket of ice or whatever. The moment of the pain hitting whatever it is, a number 9 out of 10, let's say, as a number, was always the same. 25 seconds or 30 seconds for all 3 groups. But then the normal swimmer like me, he took his hands out probably after 26 seconds, whereas this, kind of amateur swimmer, he handled it for 45 seconds. But then the professional swimmer, he was in that pain cave for 2 minutes or whatever, right? So this is just the difference between the pain level, right? What we can handle. So there's two aspects to this. But if people are surrounded in pain with people that are warm to them and they're part of their team and crew and gang and tribe, as I like tribe, it's my favorite word. They actually feel a lot less pain. So that's been done on many studies.
Pain threshold enables you to endure, right?
Yes, correct.
And most of what we need in life is the ability to just carry on. And I think not just carry on in survival mode, but like you said, carry on with like, man, what used to hurt me doesn't hurt me anymore. And there's a lot of obviously ways you train and you build that through, like what we've talked about, physiologically, through nutrition, through sleep, through all the different things. But one of the things we cannot neglect to really focus on today is this power of finding community, building community. What does it take to really cultivate community? Because you can belong to a group and still feel like you do not fit in or you do not belong, right? You're always trying to fit in, and for some reason, there's not that same sense of care and community that's felt. And one of the things I think that's helped me, because I've spent a lot of my time wanting to create a world where everyone belongs, especially those that are displaced physically because of conflict, war, violence, natural disasters. We know a bit about my work and my passion. Again, whether you're building a team in the workplace, you want to build an environment where everyone's different skill sets contribute and you bring the best out of everyone when they feel a part of the team. What does it take that? And I think part of it isn't trying to always fix each other's problems or trying to fix what seems to be the problem that we might be bringing to the table the problem that we're actually facing. The problem isn't, just get me more money or, deal with this grumpy customer and get them out of so they don't complain anymore or help fix the design of something that's not working. It's broken. What I find is most needed is a sense that I'm not in it alone, that that I've got people that can help me get through this, because we each have to face, if we're going to get through adversity, we have to face it. We have to go through it. You can't go around it. You can't tuck it under the table and ignore it. At some point, you're going to have to face it. And we all, whether we like it or not, it'll be there for you to deal with. And in a moment where I was really struggling with this because I've had a lot of burnout fatigue, trying to help fix really tragic problems and being faced with things that don't seem to be solved in a broken world, I had this thought, and I want to share it with you because I think it removes the weight of what does it mean to help others through their problems and to help and create an environment where we belong to each other. Change it from trying to fix and solve other people's issues to actually just being there. And it's this, it says, what if the struggles that we see are not problems to be solved, but invitations to be present with someone suffering, to lighten their load just enough so that we can all carry on our journey with a bit more joy, strength, and hope.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. We're not there to solve everybody's problems, and the world is not always full of problems, Houston, we have a problem. That's a problem. Like everything else is an
Exactly.
issue. Hey, problem
What
yeah.
if they're just not problems?
No.
What if they're just struggles? What if
Yeah.
life is hard and what if most of life is actually like 9 times out of 10 working for you? What if, how many days do you wake up sick as opposed to healthy? Now there's people that have chronic health conditions, but in by and large, 90% of things are actually working for us. And so what if we saw that the struggles are just a part of life and aren't a problem to solve all the time? Well, it makes it easy to be like, you know what? Maybe your friend that's calling you you don't need to fix their problem. Maybe you just need to hear them out. Maybe they just need to be heard. Maybe they just need someone that they can vent to, and you can say, you know what, you got this. Thank you for being willing to pour it out. Share your issues, your struggles, and they'll go on their way, probably knowing what the answer is, know what they have to do, but knowing they're not alone, knowing that there's always someone they can turn to.
How often do we catch ourselves having a solution for someone without even listening to them, I'm teaching this at the moment, right? This whole, you go to a customer or whatever, or an environment where you think you already have the solution without even listening to anybody. And even if it's a friend, he calls you and sometimes they don't need to tell you that they don't want your opinion or they don't want you to talk at all. They just want to bounce it off someone, call you, and then thanks, see you later. We don't do that much, do we? I'm the worst, right? I'm like, if someone comes to me, I'm always trying to help because I've always been this solution provider, right? To everybody and everything.
Here to help.
It's not good, it's not always the solution. No, you're 100% right. I am learning this all the time. Just listen, and if they want your help, they'll ask for it. Otherwise, they're just happy as Larry to say, oh, great. I've offloaded a few things, but you know what? I know what to do now. Thanks. That's all we need to do sometimes.
Create. That's an important thing. Creating an environment where people can share, because usually the first time they'll say something, and I often find this with my staff, my team, the first time they present a problem or they have something they want to talk about, it doesn't come out. The real issue is still waiting to come out. And then it's usually being able to hear, like you said, to actually listen, because if you go and try and solve the problem on what the initial communication's been, you're not actually solving the issue that needs to be addressed, or you're not addressing the issue that they really have. And so I think you're right. I think a lot of it comes down to, and you would know this with customer concern, is help me understand what you really want a resolution on. What is actually bothering you right now? What's concerning you? And I had this recently with a staff member where, they even came with what the solution had to be because they thought they were going to just try and, kind of deal with something that was agitating them. But I knew that that was not going to solve the problem once I truly understood what they were actually, what it is that they were actually kind of dealing with. And yeah, it's taking that extra time to really make sure you've captured what it is that they're actually feeling or going through.
That can only be done with the correct questions, right?
Coaching is all about that, right, Mara? So tell me, as a coach, how do you do that with, people that you're coaching, whether it be, runners or your team? What are some of those important questions? What are the ways that you can make someone feel heard and make someone feel like they're valued? Because I think that's key to that, building that and cultivating that core belonging culture in your team.
So yeah, in my two little lives, I think in the corporate world with customers, when I'm talking to customers, for me, it's obviously trying to find out where is the issue, what are they actually struggling with? Sometimes they don't know exactly, but then it also, you need to build rapport, build that relationship with people like that, because they're spending money with you and your company, of course, and we have to show them the highest respect. Yeah, it's just asking the right questions and just being genuine, being yourself, I mentioned this before on a podcast, trying to be someone else is the hardest thing to do ever, to keep that up is very hard. When it comes to run coaching, it's a little bit different. Not a lot, but kind of there, it's just a matter of trying to find out what makes them happy, right? What makes them fulfilled, Sometimes I get runners who are just frustrated with running and they're giving another coach a chance, which is fair enough, right? Some don't want to know anything about coaching anymore, but then it's kind of, I just discuss with them, But it's good to just know a little bit why they run, They don't have to answer these questions, all of them. They're very personal. Send about 5 questions out, which over time I've come up with 5 decent questions. And, one of them is, why do you run? What does it do? And how often do I get the answer of, it helps me mentally, helps me get through things. I've realized I'm a better husband, a better wife, a better brother, a better whatever it is, just a better human being. And that for me counts a lot because from there on, I can then start building on these things. So for me as a coach, from my running perspective, that's definitely very important to me. Happy runners are good runners, People who smile in a race, they have the best race. Of course, it's a struggle, but that doesn't mean we have to not smile, right? It's like we're still doing something we love. Yeah. And going to work, and it's a good point. You've mentioned it. And I really, before we close, I really want to, because you spoke about it. How fun is it to go running when you're enjoying running? And how great is it to go to work and do a job that you enjoy doing because you feel great? That is your second family. Your running group is your second family. Your workmates are your second family. I've had that in the past. I've been in an environment years ago when I was working in the UK. We were like brothers, the service engineers. There was never any issues with any of them. It was great. We were just great camaraderie. The camaraderie was fantastic. We could ask each other, usually on a Friday afternoon, because we would be driving up and down the country back home to where we live after a week away from home. We would just talk on the phone for 3 hours and discuss everything. We just felt better. It was great. So on Monday, we looked forward again to go work. We might not see each other for 6 months because everybody's on different sites, right? But yeah, it was great. That environment, but you make that. People have to work. That culture does not just come from the lead. You need to also be able to be led. You have to be coachable. And if you're not coachable, it makes it really hard.
I don't think it's any different for any sphere of life. Sport, whatever it is that you're doing, we mainly stay with things and thrive in things when it's just part of community. Don't leave a job. They might be getting paid less. They might maybe not even enjoy exactly what they're actually doing. But if they're part of something that they believe in and they're part of a team that they find they love showing up to work with and get along with, they will be loyal. they will stick around. And it's what I think a lot of people are looking for in our world today. People are looking for a place to belong, and I think if we can take those lessons of how do I truly get to know what makes someone tick? How do I truly understand them from a coaching perspective, what they want to get out of it? Sometimes for me, it's as simple as what conversation are we actually having with my wife? Like, is this a I need your help to fix this conversation? Is this a let me just vent conversation? Is this a hey, we've got some things we're going to have to work through and I just need to get it off my mind and give you the details conversation? Like all of those conversations, you know, are sometimes just, again, coming back to, are we really good at listening and understanding where each other are coming from? And when we can help people feel truly heard from whatever communication we're faced with, and recognize, again, let's come back to recognize that most things aren't problems. Houston, we have a problem is a problem. Most things will figure themselves out. And most things actually don't need a solution. Just let it sit for a few days. Write the email, don't send it. Come back to it and you'll realize, hang on, it doesn't need to be sent, or you probably need to hit delete, because most of that is your own projection or your own issues feeding into trying to resolve something. And I think when we can create that environment where there's that safety and that sense of value that everyone has a purpose and a role, I think that's what makes things successful. That's what makes us thrive as individuals as well as bringing team success. And we're building that with our Iraq 100 crew. You're probably building it with your business or with your own goals, sporting ambitions, athlete ambitions that you might have as a runner or the next event you're a part of. You're going to need to create a team, a group environment that's going to get you across the line, because that's when it's enjoyable and that's when it's fulfilling. And I think that's where that peak performance comes from.
Perfect. I think we can vibe out.
Vibe out. You're like, Tim,
This
I don't
is
want
it.
to add anything else.
I can't. It's like, that's the one. We'll let that sit for the audience. This is good.
Good on you, mate. Well, it's always, as always, wonderful checking in. Peace out to all our listeners out there.
See you soon, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to the One Percenters podcast. That's a wrap for another episode. And we're proud to be recording from Australia on Kombumerri and Gadigal country. And we honour the traditions and knowledge of the First Nations people and pay our respects to elders, past and present. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We want to hear from you, your questions or topics you would like us to cover, and you can easily do that in the Spotify app. And for those of you that are ready to discover your peak performance edge today, just head on over to our website. That is top.coach. That's TOPP.coach. And start unlocking your unlimited potential with us today. We would love to work with you. And that's it for now. Until next time, what are you waiting for?